Welcome. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later, we're going to talk to Perry Penley of the Mountain States Legal Foundation. But first, the only libertarian shrink I know, Shawn Smith. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
All right. You've been an outspoken libertarian and a psychotherapist.
Psychologist.
Whatever.
Well, I paid for that. It's expensive.
How do you keep those together? Because I've never known too many libertarian, individualistic shrinks.
It doesn't make sense, because if you're a psychologist, you should believe in the strength of the individual, right? And you should believe in freedom. And I think that what happens as psychologists, we're very big hearts, and so we get freedom confused with doing good things for people. And so that's why you see a lot of liberal psychologists, not a lot of libertarian. But any psychologist should be libertarian if they're going to be consistent.
You've put out how many books now?
This is number 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
Get a life.
Yeah.
You put out a book on advice to women about finding a good match, a guy that they like. I had no interest in that.
Right.
And then finally you put out this one, The Tactical Guide to Women. It's on Audible, so I got to listen to it because as a dyslexic, it's the only way I can do it. This was amazing. This was incredible, and I've never read anything like it. Let's start off with this. When we were kids, our folks taught us all sorts of good things. How to save money, how to tie our shoelaces, how to look somebody in the eye when you're talking to them. But they did a crap job of telling us how to pick a woman. Is this pretty common?
That's exactly why I wrote it, because I didn't get those lessons. You know, in a lot of families, they just do the alcohol and the obesity and the yelling at each other, and that's how they communicate. There are better ways to go around it. And as men, we don't do a very good job of talking to each other and talking to our sons about what makes a good choice. How are you going to not destroy your life?
All right, what is the cost of marrying the wrong person? It's pretty easy. You just get a divorce.
Right.
It's not that pricey. It's like returning something to Walmart. It's not that bad.
Yeah, divorce is easy. The cost is whatever you hold most dear, because you're bringing that person into your inner circle. So if you value freedom, your freedom is what's at risk. If you value money, your money is at risk, because you're bringing somebody very close into your world. So I could tell you all kinds of stories about the guys who valued something like their freedom and they lost it. A guy who started a business, and he was in his late 30s, and he had this business that was sustaining him. He was probably never going to be rich, but it was sustaining him, and it probably would have just kept going. Got into his late 30s and decided that he needed a woman in his life, or he wanted a woman in his life, and he, like you and I, had not been taught how to do this, and so he followed his heart, which is mistake number 1. Your heart's an idiot, usually. And he brought a woman into his life who, after she was in his house and after he had brought her into his business and the honeymoon started to fade, she started to change a little bit. She started to get a little bit violent, and she started to get a little bit controlling. And eventually he decided that he had to get away from this woman. Now mind you, he had built this business because he valued freedom. That's why he had done this on his own. And to get rid of this woman, she put him in a position where he was either going to have to go to court to defend himself because she was going to get litigious, or he was going to have to buy her off. Those were his choices. And so his lawyer advised him, well, cheapest way out of this is to buy her off. So he had to liquidate his business, start over again. He lost his freedom.
So for guys my age and your age, we've been through this stories. As a guy who's been divorced, and I've got a great relationship with my ex-wife, and we parent really well, but damn it, I wish somebody got me this book when I was getting out of high school and going to college that said, here's some advice on really what you're doing. And it's tough because guys get a bad rap, in that I think so much of the relationship advice we hear is very female-centric.
Yes.
And there's no guys telling other guys their lessons of life. Am I wrong on this one?
No, you're absolutely right. When I was writing a previous book, I was discussing with a publisher what sells and what doesn't sell, and they said, we never write relationship books for guys because they don't sell. And that is obviously wrong, because this is doing gangbusters. And I think the real answer is that guys don't buy relationship books that are written for women, about women, in women language. This is a book by a man for men, and
well, and also let me say, in man language. That is, there's some swear words. You talk about sex. You talk like a guy who you're having a beer with. So for a guy who hates books on relationships, I could stomach this. So congratulations.
Thanks. That's high praise.
You can put that in the back of the jacket. Right. I can stomach this book. You go a lot into what you call the honeymoon phase, and that is one dangerous phase. What is a honeymoon phase in a relationship?
Well, we all know the vernacular. Like you have puppy dog eyes for somebody. They can do no wrong. They're idealized. They idealize you. There has been some research looking at serotonin signatures in the blood to try to trace how long this actually lasts. And this is a chemically altered state of mind. I mean, you're basically walking around with a different mindset. You're not yourself. You're not seeing the world the way it is. They're not seeing you the way you are. But this lasts between 9 and 18 months. And then when that starts to go away, then the other person starts to become a little more real and more of a human. Unfortunately, people like to make big decisions in that honeymoon phase before they know what they're getting into. They start getting dogs. They start buying furniture.
Well, what's wrong with getting a dog and buying furniture? You're in the honeymoon phase. You're in this 1 year. You love being around each other. Those cute little things that you think would annoy you. You think, oh, that's actually endearing. What's wrong with buying a dog?
There's a million things wrong with it, but actually there are some researchers here at the University of Denver, just coincidentally, that have gotten a lot of press. And they've talked about couples sliding into relationships because they buy the dog, they get the furniture, and they do these things during the honeymoon phase, and then they figure out that they're stuck in this relationship when they've realized, oh, I don't really like this person. But it's hard, and it's harder for men to extract themselves than women typically.
Women pull the plug on relationships more often than guys, is that right? At least with divorces.
But with divorces, before divorce, when people are either cohabitating or just dating, men and women dissolve relationships equally, 50-50. After marriage, women initiate divorces 69% of the time. This was a sociological study last year. So they're initiating more than 2/3 of the divorces. And that's one of the things that makes this so risky for men.
What's the difference?
Well, if you read the literature in my profession, the only answer is that women are less satisfied in marriage. But you and I have both met guys who are unsatisfied in their marriage. They don't want to leave because leaving is more expensive than staying. And
say that again, because I know so many guys who have been in that, and I've known women in the same thing, that this is, I'm going to wait till the kids are out of college or out of high school, or I got to wait till this. And I've known guys who live lives of quiet desperation because it just costs too much to get out.
Yeah. And let's quantify it, that 96 to 97%, depending on which study you look at, 96 to 97% of alimony still goes to women. 5 out of 6 primary custody arrangements go to women. So what do men lose when they get divorced? They lose their money, they lose their kids. And so when my profession is saying, well, the reason women get divorced, initiate divorce, is because they're unhappy, another possibility is that women are aware that there isn't a big advantage in family court to them.
And you're not allowed to talk about this, particularly now, #MeToo. There seems to be this sense that guys can't talk about this stuff, and let's talk about let's talk a little bit about this. Guys talk differently than women. Men want something different than women. What is the biggest mistake guys make going into a relationship?
Listening to the wrong part of their body and not putting some logic behind their decision, because this is the message that's in society.
I just need to be clear, because I only listen to one part of my body, and I think it's okay.
I was talking about your heart.
What were you thinking? I've never listened to that. What should you listen to, and what does that mean?
Putting some logic behind it. We hear this message in society. It's in the movies, it's in comedy, it's everywhere, that you should follow your heart in romance. That's stupid advice, because your heart is going to lead you to somebody. If you're not, if you have some insecurities or some maladjustments, your heart's going to lead you to somebody who's going to fit that insecurity perfectly and end up being a nightmare for you. So if you've done a ton of work on what drives you, then sure, follow your heart. But
I've got a theory that dysfunction attracts an equal dysfunction. Whatever, you find people and you go, how did this abusive person find the right woman to be the enabler for him? And it's just like the universe kind of draws them together like dysfunctional magnets.
Yeah, not only that, but people will turn the other person into the person that they fear most.
We're talking about entertainment. And I am tired of the Hollywood stereotype of buffoonish, immature man. You know, the usual romantic comedy gets involved with woman. Yeah. Woman is smarter, more mature. You know, hilarity ensues, and by the end of it, he then grows up.
Right.
Knocked Up, a perfect example. She gets pregnant, and the guy is a buffoon. And at the end of the movie, what does he do? He becomes a real man and does this. Yeah, okay. There's another story that guys want to be guys, and you shouldn't lose yourself. In your book, you call it losing your man card. And we all know guys who get into relationships, get into marriages, and lose their man card. Give me a definition.
Man card. Well, the definition that I like comes from Roy Baumeister. He's a social psychology guy in Florida, and he has noticed that every society in the world across time has this requirement of men, that men need to prove themselves. So a woman reaches maturity, she's considered a woman, but a man isn't considered a man until he goes through a feat of strength or until he does things to prove himself.
Right, so slow down there, because that in itself is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
A woman is a woman by a biological clock. Mm-hmm. Oh, honey, now you're a woman. Mm-hmm. A guy is still a boy until he achieves something or faces down a fear or faces down something.
Right.
And that's when dad slaps him on the back and goes, you're a man now.
Yeah, and in Western society, it's ongoing accomplishments. That's what's expected of men. You can't rest on your laurels. And that's fine with me because I have things to do, so I don't mind doing that. But what was your question about?
This idea of you have to make them mature, that you lose your man card. What is a man card?
So the man card is not, according to society, is not creating more than you consume. So you're providing for somebody.
So if you make more than you spend, do you have a man card? This is not an economic thing. I see it more as an attitude that if you get into a relationship and you find yourself, and by the way, this is probably true for women too, but I'm not a woman, I can't take it, but you're no longer doing the things that you did before that bring you the joy.
Yeah.
You know, you're going out with the guys, or you're playing poker, you're going fishing, you know, whatever it is that you loved before, you know. But the saying is, you know, if it makes your wife happy, then you'll be happy.
That's the worst advice in the world, and it doesn't serve women well either. That happy wife, happy life advice, it breeds resentment on both sides. It's just not good advice.
Why? What? I mean, I've heard it all the time. Hey, makes my wife happy.
Right.
We're okay.
How many women do you know that like an emasculated man? Or how many healthy women? I
live in Boulder. I think every woman there likes an emasculated man.
Well, they're in business then.
Yeah.
Outside of Boulder, women tend not to like this, and some of the best feedback that I've gotten on this book has been pretty good feedback, but I've gotten wonderful feedback from women who say, basically telling me, I like men. I don't like these little boys that I see running around that are scared to say anything and scared to be men. I like men. So. And
it's difficult now. This is where it gets back to the beginning, where politics and psychology start mixing again, and that right now, politically, it is a lot of pressure for a guy to be who he is, a guy. To say the kind of things that guys say among themselves that they've been saying since the beginning of time, to have the urges men have to do the things men do, because then you're a Neanderthal. Or worse, you're a sexual harasser. Or worse, you're just beneath us.
Yeah.
So I get these two things. So you're telling me women want men who haven't been emasculated,
right.
Yet I see a political society, a media society that emasculates men. Doesn't this sound like a mental conflict?
It is, and it puts guys in a bad position because young men, they understand that they need to earn their man cards because the message is still in society that you need to go out and you need to create more than you consume. You need to be of service. And then they go to college and they get a message that you can't possibly be of service because you're a man. You are inherently oppressive and evil and dark, and you must control your instincts, and you cannot follow those instincts. So young guys, of course, they're retreating into video games and so forth because they're being taught that they can't win. But then there are other guys who are going the other direction. They're going full on, I'm going to be a man. You know, you can see it in the manosphere, the quote-unquote manosphere out there. People.
I've never heard this term. What is the manosphere?
These are the websites and the message boards out there where guys are saying, hey, let's go bow hunting because this is what this is fun, and I'm
This is
tired
fun.
of, yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. It was bad enough in the mid-'80s when I went to college of, you know, you're a man, you're wrong, shut up, and change.
Right.
I can't imagine with all the safe spaces and hate code violations and allegations and no due process for those allegations, what it's got to be like for a young man now. So let's wrap this up. If I'm going to ask you two questions. There's an 18-year-old kid who you actually have, 10 seconds to get a message to. What is the message about finding the right woman?
Don't follow your heart, and don't lead with sex. Guys get in trouble when they lead with sex.
That's the worst advice you have ever given.
Don't have sex. I'm not saying that. I'm saying don't lead with it. Like, don't make it the centerpiece of the relationship, because when you do that, you're blinding yourself to all the information that you need about that person.
All right, what about guys our age who've been divorced, and now we read this thing and like, yeah, that's so true. What's the advice?
Read the book.
No, don't read the book. What, same advice?
For older guys, unpack your old mistakes, because a lot of guys, well, not just guys, men and women, they go into the next relationship and they just repeat their mistakes. And if they're marrying somebody different than their first husband or second husband or third husband, they're going to turn this guy into their first, second, third husband unless they really take a good, hard look at what they're doing.
This is a great read. I highly recommend it. The Tactical Guide to Women. Shawn, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.